Hi everybody, it's Az here from HeelvsBabyface with part 2 of why the open world of Warcraft is failing, and a topic which requires its own video, and that is player housing, or at least this was Blizzard's attempt at player housing, and also, and more importantly, how that actually connects to the open world and open world content. But first, before we even look at any other examples, we have to identify where the actual player housing for World of Warcraft went wrong. Now, the actual idea for player housing is very sound indeed, nothing wrong with it whatsoever. World of Warcraft wanted to bring their own version of player housing into the game, make it a little bit different from everyone else's, and that's to be commended, to be perfectly honest with you. However, you actually have to identify what makes player housing interesting and play to those strengths. Blizzard made some really fundamental errors when it came to constructing this type of content. Now, the first major mistake that Blizzard made was placing player housing here on Draenor. It doesn't make a lick of sense. Draenor was in an alternative timeline. Our version is Outland, and it was destroyed. This is what connects to our universe. So placing the player housing here, in a place where a story was to be concluded, it wouldn't make any sense for your player housing to be situated in an alternative dimension and jumping back and forth to your own reality. No, your player housing should have been situated on Azeroth itself, and knowing Blizzard to be a little bit more strict with these things, Alliance for the Eastern Kingdoms and the Horde for Kalimdor. This is the first error that Blizzard made, but they wanted to tell a story in Draenor and therefore put themselves into a corner as regards to where the player housing was going to be situated. The second major mistake that Blizzard made is they brought the outside world into the garrison instead of vice versa, making you go out into the outside world from your garrison, which happened for only a short period of time. Everything that you could ever want was here. You wanted to herb? Don't worry, there's a garden. You wanted some ore? Don't worry, there's a mine. Fish? We've got it. Ponds inside the garrison. And then on top of that, there was all of your profession buildings too. Banks. On top of that, portals taking you to places. There was no want for anything when you had your garrison, and that defeated the whole point of housing. Rather ironically, it was during the initial setup phases for your garrison that it was actually at its strongest. Blizzard seemingly understood how player housing should be structured. You started off with a tier 1 garrison. You could only have a couple of plots to build on there, and therefore to upgrade it, you needed to go out into the world. You needed to quest, you needed to dungeoneer, you had followers to seek out and find, some hidden ones all over the place. I did a lot of guides for them. Very popular indeed. And then, once you'd met those requirements and come back, jingo bingo, you could upgrade it to level 2 garrison, which opened up more plots. Opening up more plots equaled more buildings starting at level 1, which required further upgrading to 2 and 3, etc. And then finally hitting a grade 3 garrison, which opened up the maximum plots available, and therefore again further buildings to be placed, further blueprints to be farmed through achievements and other such methods to be able to up the buildings. Everything seemed to be structurally sound. This is where Blizzard made their final and fatal error. You see, player housing is set up for vanity, and Blizzard set the garrisons up for utility. So when you hit level 3 with your garrison, and once your buildings match that level 3, there was no further progression. Where the fun should have started, it actually ended. And you see, the problem with that is utility makes you want for nothing. Everything is at your fingertips, and my God, did the command table make sure of that. Never mind the fact that your profession buildings could do everything you needed, and the herb garden, the mine, the ponds, everything that you could possibly need was right at your fingertips. Whereas with vanity, it makes you want to improve what you have in your player housing. And therefore, to improve it, you have to go out into the world and do the content to get the necessary money, resources, achievements necessary to get or make that special object that could go inside of your housing. In World of Warcraft's quest to put its own spin on player housing, they did what Blizz tend to do. Overthink things, make them too convoluted, and ultimately destroy them. The garrison was useless at the end of Warlords of Draenor, and that is not how player housing should operate. Player housing should be relevant at all times. And the other two games which I'm playing, Final Fantasy XIV and The Elder Scrolls Online, they both have very good systems of player housing that are relevant regardless of which expansion is the current one. And more importantly, both of their versions of player housing differ quite a lot. So let's start with Final Fantasy XIV. Now, they unashamedly understand the whole aspect of vanity and status when it comes to player housing. And although they don't do everything perfectly, and I'll get onto that shortly, they offer player housing in 3 different forms. Well, technically 4. You can purchase plots of land, not buildings, plots of land. Large plots, medium plots, and small plots. The one that you can see behind me is quite obviously a large plot. And on that plot of land is where you build your building. You start to construct your building. There are so many different styles of building which you can construct. And it also leaves a garden area out front, which you can also decorate, as you can clearly see, with multiple different things. And the reason why it shows off status is because obviously somebody who plays the game more is able to accrue more wealth in that period of time, will likely be able to snap up these large plots of land, plonk these big chateaus down, and therefore really show off their opulence and wealth. Whereas somebody who doesn't get to play the game as often probably won't have accrued that much money, and therefore they might be able to afford a medium plot. They might only be able to afford a small plot. None of them are shabby, but it plays into the status area. On top of that, you can also utilize this as guild housing too, or free company housing, as they like to call it in Final Fantasy XIV. It's all about showing off in this game, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. Oh, and that 4th one I was talking to you about, it's this. A small, pokey apartment. But anybody can own this. Anybody can have their own apartment. They're all instance-based. Yeah, you can't get a whole lot down. A little bit here and there. But hey, it's all about how much money you've got, how much you can spend. So even if you are the poorest of the poor, you can still get yourself a little something. Accrue some money, and who knows, in the future, you might be able to grab something a little bit bigger. One of the other cool features of Final Fantasy XIV's player housing is there are multiple plots in an instance area. It's not just your building and that's it. So you can see other people's, and they're all ranging from large, medium, small, because the size of the plot is determined by the instance, not by the money. And on top of that, if people allow you to, you can actually enter their own buildings and have a look inside to see how they've decorated it. So what does all this have to do with the open world? Well, the simple fact of the matter is, people, everything that you can see here is acquired in some form or another. It's either acquired by bosses, it's either acquired by crafting, but it's acquired nonetheless, achievements. And to do these things, you need to be out and about. To be able to craft, you have to get the correct resources, and therefore make sure that you go out and gather them, or buy them, or sell other things so you can... Anyway, multiple different avenues of getting these items. And then you can place them wherever you want in your house. There's no fixed position. Wherever you want something to go, it can go. And therefore houses become complete and utterly bespoke. And with crafting in Final Fantasy XIV being such an in-depth major function of the game, which, as I have previously mentioned in the other video, is taken just as seriously as any battle combat class out there, the amount of unbelievable wicked things that you can craft for your house is just mind-boggling. And so it makes you want to push that crafting on. Oh dear. Looks like we've got some decorating to do down here. You can push that crafting on, and you can get those books which have the patterns which allow you to craft these amazing things, or go out, do those achievements, get the item, or go out, kill those bosses, kill those mobs, do the rep for whichever faction it is out there, get that to a certain degree so you can purchase from their quartermasters. Do you understand what I'm saying? When you want to build up your house, when you want it to get better and better, you've got to put the effort in. And therefore, you've got to go out and do the necessary things to come back and place them here. This is synergistic content. This is where one form of content can have a knock-on effect to another form of content, that can have a knock-on effect to another form of content. And yet, all those separate pieces of content can stand alone as well. It's a great thing for the game. Another word for it is choice. It's great to have choice. I chose this house. It's a little one, it's all I can afford, but still, my house. Now, player housing is available in all the major cities, and they have their own unique look and feel about them. I've personally got mine in Limsa Lominsa because I love this kind of stucco-esque feel to it. It feels very Mediterranean, and after all, I am a European. But I did say at the start there was something about the player housing in Final Fantasy XIV that I didn't like. And that is the number of wards, which is what one of these things is, this instance area is, are quite low compared to the number of people playing the game. And therefore there is a huge proportion of the community which simply are unable to purchase a house and have to settle for an apartment, which is a terrible, terrible shame. Many, many more wards need to be made available for people to purchase properties, because player housing in Final Fantasy XIV is really, really good. Now, The Elder Scrolls Online operates a completely different style of player housing, and this is for one particular reason. Whereas the other two games, WoW and Final Fantasy XIV, are subscription-only games, The Elder Scrolls Online is not. It's a pay-to-play. You purchase the base game, and then you can play free-to-play from there on in. But of course, it has things like a cash shop, and it has also an optional subscription. Should you wish to choose that, you of course get many more benefits and perks, like unlocking all the DLCs without having to purchase it for one. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about the player housing. And yes, that's mine. Now, Elder Scrolls Online differs very much in that you can purchase multiple properties, and they range from small properties to medium-sized properties to large properties like the one I own. And there are various ways of actually purchasing them. But, rather coolly, you can try before you buy. You can see somewhere that you like, and then you can go visit them immediately and see exactly what this property will look like with you inside of it. Once there, you can peruse at your leisure, and then you can have a look to see what the damage will be. Now, thankfully, or maybe not in this case, you can purchase properties with in-game gold. Now, that doesn't have to be purchased with real money. That is accrued by doing all your various things throughout the course of the game. However, this is a large property, and it's 3.8 million. And I'm running a little bit short right now. And because this is a pay-to-play, which requires no subscription, you do have an option to buy it with crowns, which in essence is real money. You can also purchase it fully furnished and also preview what it would be like fully furnished. However, this would be an IRL money purchase only. Now, that was one of the largest properties that you could purchase, and I was starting right at the top. If we go to a smaller property now, you can see it's a lot more affordable. Only 56,000 gold in game. And that would take you, even a brand new player, probably 2, 3, 4 weeks to accrue throughout the course of the game. Also, it is a low cost for IRL money as well. But once more, if you do want to purchase a furnished version, then it is going to be IRL money only. But even a small house that looked pretty pokey when it was empty can look very homely when it has the right things put into it. And that's why I wouldn't part with IRL money to furnish a house like this. This is when the game really does come into its own as regards to what it offers for you to kit out your own houses. So once more, it's linked together with the crafting system. Funny that, isn't it? How player housing and crafting seem to go synergistically together. It's as if they were made for each other. Anyway, and in this area that I'm at right now, I'm at one of the woodworking crafting tables, and you can see all the different items that I can currently construct. Not only that, but you can physically see what these items would look like as well before you craft them, and you can get a good idea of whether or not they would fit inside of your personal house. Now, this is only one facet. If I went to a different type of profession table, like clothing, for example, then I'd be able to craft things like rugs and drapes and banners and different things like that, as well as more, and go to a different profession table and craft different items that are more bespoke to that type of profession. And the things that you can see here, these are things which I've just found myself, patterns that I have discovered in my travels. There are many, many more which I've still yet to get, and there are plenty which can be purchased through doing in-game achievements. But where do I discover these patterns? Now, you're never going to believe this, people, but it's in the open world. It's as if it fits the theme of the video. You see, in the Elder Scrolls Online, you can pretty much loot anything when you're out there. Urns, chests, crates, sacks, backpacks, people, houses. Yeah, you can steal. That's fine. And inside any of these containers, you may actually find a pattern. But the content in Elder Scrolls Online operates slightly differently in the open world, in as much as it's a really clever blend of open world exploration and discovery, and places like this, which are delves, which are single player instance based content where multiple people can be inside, dungeons and trials, which are kind of like your raids. And so you'll organically go from external world into an instance to have a look, back out into the open world, into an instance, back out, etc., etc. And when you're in these other forms of content, you can find patterns not only in their containers, but from boss mobs, from regular mobs. You can find them pretty much anywhere. You just have to go out and look. And once more, this has a knock-on effect. I mean, you could say to yourself, right, I'm going to go out, I'm going to do some delves, I'm going to do some exploring, open some chests, try and see if I can find some patterns. And then, just by accident, you often find yourself on an adventure doing something else. You get sidetracked. It organically pushes you into the content of the game. It's very clever how things can do that. And then you can feel rewarded if you do find a pattern, because it may come out the blue, and in the Elder Scrolls Online, patterns come in greens, blues, and purples. And any lover of MMORPGs will understand what that means. Yes, you start seeing a blue and a purple, you start getting excited that you've just discovered something rather cool and rather funky. If you haven't got the message yet, let me spell it out for you. Player housing may seem like an incidental piece of content to some people. It may seem like a small vanity project that isn't that necessary. But when you see how player housing can have a dramatic knock-on effect to the way that content is actually structured in your game, you suddenly realise how important it is. Not only does it get you out into the world doing various achievements, exploration elements, or whatever, but it also has a major impact on something like crafting. And in the world of Warcraft, crafting is currently a complete joke. If player housing was brought into the world of Warcraft as a vanity project, then crafting could really come into its own. You could start to use that to create various things, various furnishings. And because of the way that World of Warcraft limits the amount of professions that you have, that means those professions will all be relevant, as you can each sell your various wares on the auction house and profiteer from it. It allows the sale and exchange of patterns as well for various professions, and it should get people out and about farming materials, in dungeons, trying to get patterns. Treasure chests can suddenly become a lot more relevant if they have things like patterns or furnishings in them. LFR, raid bosses, etc., etc. The knock-on effect from something as small as player housing is actually astronomical. And it makes your outside world, as we've seen from Final Fantasy XIV and the Elder Scrolls Online, very relevant indeed. In Final Fantasy XIV, the necessary requirement for materials. So you're always going out farming those materials, getting you out there. Again, you never know what you're going to get up to. You might discover a little bit of fun. The Elder Scrolls Online does it a lot better because of the way that their scaled up world works. You can go any zone, it's scaling to you, and anything that you loot could have something in it. Any delve that you go in, any dungeon, any public dungeon, any trial. You just never know. This is so important to making your outside world more relevant, because it doesn't just help the player housing element of it. It has the whole knock-on effect for all the other forms of content that you offer. It gives people choice. It gives people options. And I really think the World of Warcraft needs to look very seriously at bringing player housing in, I would say, in the very next expansion. So I hope you enjoyed the vid. If you did, do get a thumbs up and also subscribe to the channel. Follow me on social media and Twitch for live streaming. Links, they're in the description box down below. And I'll be back with some more stuff very soon. You take care. Bye for now.